I'm sorry it's taken a while for me to make the next movie. I've been thinking a lot about what subject to do, and I kind of went for time. And that's basically because I think time is a very deep subject. Most people look at time as something that continues forward all the time and always at the same steady pace. 1 second is always 1 second, and they just think of time like that. But I see time as something that can be experienced very differently. Like, for example, sometimes you may feel like time is moving faster, and sometimes like time is moving slower. And there's been some studies done on the subject. Some would say that it feels like time moves faster when you're having fun. Actually, they did a kind of study recently with loads of people that they were supposed to guess how long time went from one toot of the horn to another toot of the horn, and actually the people who had really fun thought more time had passed. And I think that kind of cement my idea that actually you experience time when more happens in it. It feels like more time has passed, even though actually less time has passed. But it's not just that. We also have to take into account that time feels different for different people, not just because of what's happening around you. It can also be affected by what age you are. For example, you have a 5-year-old counting down the days to Christmas. For them, it's like taking for ages. While for a grown-up person, it might be, oh dear, it's already here. But also, if you compare time and how it feels like when you're getting older, it feels like it's just going so fast round, and suddenly it's the next year and stuff. I think that might be because the older you get, the bigger perspective you get on your life. Like when you're 5 years old, you only have 5 years to compare things to, and in each of those years separate things happen. And then when you're 10 years, you kind of compare what happens from when you were 5 until you were 10 compared to what happened when you was 1 until you were 5. And then you double the possible thinking you can have about time. But that also means that you think less things fit into the same timeline. And then of course when you're turning 20, well, 1 year is only 1/20th of your year, of your life, compared to when you were 5 it was 1/5. And it's a very big difference between 5% of your life and 20%. And basically, the longer you have lived, the faster it will feel like time is going. But then you have this thing that usually once they turn 40, and some people when they turn 30, they go through this crisis and they start to want to do more things because they realize life is short. And I think that's kind of nice, because that makes you re-evaluate what time actually is. And it's not until you really start thinking about what time is that you get a sense of your accomplishment and what you can do in the life and the time you actually do have. A lot of people, they assume I'm gonna live until I'm 80 or 90 years old. Most people assume they will have 80 years. And that makes you evaluate the time that you have in front of you very differently compared to a person who says, I'm only gonna live until I'm 50 and then I'm gonna die. that means that the time that you actually have, you spend very differently. And also the way you do spend your time, like if you know you're dying, you have a terminal disease, most people say they are a lot happier and they feel like, well, they are not happier because they are dying, but if they know I only have 3 or 4 months left to live, they try to do things that make them happy. And that's what I mean with they are happier, because they spend and think about how they spend their time that they do have, if they are healthy enough to do that. And I think a lot of people should, instead of thinking, oh, I have 60 years ahead of me, don't think like that. Assume you're gonna die when you're 40 or 45 years old, and live your life from that purpose and try to have done everything you need to do by the year you turn 40. Because then you can enjoy the life you actually do have, and you will spend it very differently. Like, for example, people, I see a lot of people, I go on walks out in the woods in the area, looking at greenery and parks and flowers, birds, you name it. And I kind of enjoy that, but I've noticed that there are some people who go on these healthy walks a lot, but they have their earpods in all the time. And the thing that happens when you plug up to what's actually happening around you, you don't hear the sound of the winds in the trees and the birds chirping away. What happens is you only hear the music and that steady beat, and you kind of get into a faster pace. So then you do that walking that you were supposed to do, and it feels like, oh, it's already over wherever you were heading. Say you're going to walk half a mile by foot, and it's already over because you had the music in your ear and your mind were kind of wandering all the time. And that's good. Your mind do need to wander sometimes, but it will wander and it will sing along to the music, and you don't really get to tune down and just breathe and actually enjoy the walk. While if you don't have the earpods in, you don't listen to the music, you will experience time very differently. It will feel like it takes a lot longer to get to a place, and you might notice things you wouldn't normally because you experience time differently. I also see a lot of people that goes on those walks to be healthy, and they are just staring at their phone, texting all the time. And the thing is that time moves very differently if you're chatting with someone than if you're not. You may feel that time is going faster, and that might be nice, but actually you're kind of slowing down your own brain cells, I believe, because you're reading what that person is saying, and in your mind you're reading it the way they would have said it. And then you're writing what you said, or maybe even reading what you said, thinking how it would sound. So you're actually chatting on the same level that you would if you were face to face to the person, and that's good. That's really good because you get the sense of socializing. But it kind of slows down your brain cells in such a way that you don't really experience the surroundings, and you can't really enjoy the time that you do have in the same manners. It would be much nicer for you if you actually just walked to the side of the road and did the texting and then put the phone away and did a walk. And I think that's something to think about philosophically, what you're doing with the time you do have. Because if you're walking with the earpods in your ears, you don't really hear the surrounding the same way. And if you're just staring down your phone, you're not experiencing the surroundings the right way. It's just a very different time that you get into. And besides, you're doing a lot of things on autopilot. When you're doing those things, when you have the music in your ears, when you're down on your phone, you're basically walking on autopilot. You're doing stuff on autopilot. And I don't remember who it was that originally said it. They said that everyone dies by the age of 25, because that's the age when you start like autopiloting more or less your entire life. And if you go on with your life on autopilot, time will just flow steady, steady, steady. But if you turn off that autopilot, even though it takes exactly the same amount of time for you to walk that half a mile, it will feel like it's taking 3 or 4 times as long time, because you experienced a lot of more things. You've seen a butterfly fly by. You were looking at a few birds in the trees while you were walking. You maybe stopped briefly to smell a flower. You're not on autopilot. And when you're not on autopilot, you enjoy life a lot more. And I think especially in those corona times that we are having right now, a lot of people feel a lot bored. There might not be as many people out moving about. I happen to live very near the woods, and I've noticed that a lot of more people are going out to the woods, but they still have their earbuds and their phones. And I think that if they didn't do those things and actually focused their socializing on the time when they do need to be home and are in lockdown quarantine anyway, they would enjoy that time more when they were socializing. Like making it a thing of it, just the same way like I'm going to town to go to a coffee shop with a friend, and then I spend that time with that person. I think you should do the same with your time when you're at home now, when you're in quarantine. Actually make sure that when you are socializing fully. And excuse me for, I have a throat problem that makes my throat hurts a lot, so I'm sneezing. I'm not sick, it's just hurts when I speak. Anyway, I think we should spend time to the fullest, living out those moments that we actually do have. And if you do that when you're socializing, turn off the television, turn off the music, and just be social, even if you're just Skyping or FaceTiming or whatever you're doing. If you're doing that socializing and put 100% of yourself in it, you will enjoy it a lot more. And the time spent there, it might feel like it's going faster, but it will also be time you have not autopiloted through your relationship with whoever you're speaking to. And you should not autopilot through your social life. In the same way, you should not autopilot through the dead time you have. And if you have dead time going out, taking the trash out, you don't need to put earbuds in your ears to make that a fun thing. Look at the pavement or the flowers and the trees, and try to enjoy the little time you do have, because you never know how much time you actually do have. And the older you get, the faster it will feel like time is passing by. And that's because you're getting so used to just autopiloting through everything. I would recommend trying to stop autopiloting. Like if you're doing the dishes by hand, maybe don't do all the dishes, maybe just do one mug and a plate, and take a rest and go think about stuff and do other things, and then continue doing a few things. Because if you divide it up, even those things, you're not just autopiloting through them. It might sound retarded because most people think, oh, it would be so nice when the dishes are done. But actually, if you have done all the dishes and you vacuum cleaned all the floors and you have mopped up everything and everything is perfectly clean, you feel bored. And when you feel bored, your brain goes into a half sleep mode that is like autopilot. And you just start autopiloting through just hanging in front of the TV hours after hours. Or something other stupid like that. And you should try to avoid that. So don't do everything at once. But do take care of your hygiene, of course. I don't mean have dishes to do for 2 months back or something like that. No, I mean, just take your time and try to enjoy the little time you have in between, because we don't have that much time. And most people have a lot less time left than they could possibly know of. And that's kind of sad. And really think about that, how you're spending the time and how you're measuring the time. I know a few grown-up people who said that they felt like life finally had meaning as soon as they started to write a diary again. That might help. I keep it on my phone. A diary where I write in every day, every time I've done something like taking a walk or something. And that's just to remind myself that I've actually done something. And that's important, especially in those kind of times when you feel like your life is on hold. And you're just waiting and waiting and waiting and everything is standing still. You really get a lot of time to think, to enjoy. Find a secluded place. If you live near the woods, go into the woods. And maybe if you live in the middle of a town or in the outskirts of a town or something, if it's safe, take a walk later in the evening or in the middle of the night. You need the fresh air and you will feel like time ain't standing as still as it would feel elsewhere. And besides, it's those times when you have downtown that is not autopiloted, when you're not having the earbuds in, when you're not staring at the phone. It's those times you come up with ideas that might change your future. And right now a lot of people around the world is getting laid off their jobs. There's a lot of people worried. Just taking that extra walk, just looking at the trees and the flowers and the birds, it will calm you down, make you less worried, but it will also give you the moment to think about things you wouldn't think normally. And maybe you come up with an idea and become your own boss in your own little mini company that you would never ever have thought about creating if you didn't have that real time, if you weren't off pilot for a moment. So really think about time and how you spend it, and off pilot yourself. Don't autopilot. Off pilot. Open your eyes and you'll see time will move so much slower so much calmer. You will stress down, the worries will fleet away, or float away, I think it's called. Just take your time and enjoy it.